Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar, and happy AI Literacy Day. We're very excited to present this professional development series on AI literacy. You can go to ailiteracyday.org/synchronous-pd for the full schedule, which I will link in the chat. Throughout today, you'll have the chance to do a deep dive into the future of technology alongside leading experts. And for this webinar, we have Digital Promise's Dr. Pati Ruiz, Senior Director of Edtech and Emerging Technologies, and Keun-woo Lee, Learning Experience Designer. They will be discussing deepening AI understanding and evaluation practices in K12, how educators can build on digital literacy, computational thinking, and computer science initiatives to promote AI literacy. So if you have questions throughout the presentation, please put them in the chat. We'll have a chance to get to Q&A at the end of the presentation. So welcome, Dr. Ruiz. Welcome, Keun-woo. We're very excited to have you, and take it away.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Like we just heard, Keun-woo and I are excited to be here to talk about AI literacy. And today we're excited to give you an overview really of how educators can build on foundational skills to promote AI literacy. It's really great to see you all introducing yourselves in the chat. So please keep doing that. We'd love to hear from you. And we'd also love to hear your questions in the chat. We'll try to get to some of those at the end. So we have a lot in store for you today. First, we'll give an overview of Digital Promise. We'll give you an overview of our AI literacy framework. And then I'm really excited to have Keun-woo jump in with an activity for us. So some housekeeping, please do use the Zoom chat. Also, please, if you can, interact with folks using the emojis. I think that is enabled on this chat, but if it's not, then just please include your messages to us in chat. We'll be checking those out and keeping an eye out for those. So I want to talk a little bit about Digital Promise. Our mission at Digital Promise is to shape the future of learning and advance equitable education systems by bringing together research, practice, and technology. Keun-woo and I represent two different teams at Digital Promise, and Keun-woo is on the Learning Experience Design team. I am on the Edtech and Emerging Technologies team, and we collaborate closely with our colleagues on Learning Experience Design team, as well as our Digital Equity team. As we talk about AI, it's really important to ground ourselves in a framework that's aligned with your district school values. And at Digital Promise, we use the Digital Equity framework to ground the work that we do. So please know that this is where our presentation is grounded. We think a lot about digital equity and ensuring that every individual possesses the necessary technological resources to actively engage in our increasingly technological society. So for digital equity to be successful, we know that technology, tools, and systems have to be available and accessible to learners and their families. They have to be affordable to maintain, and learners and families have to have the information and skills to access the technology. So availability, affordability, adoption. This goes hand in hand with what the US National Edtech Plan recently shared in terms of barriers to access to technology. So for us, it's important that these technologies are available, are affordable, and are able to be adopted thoughtfully into practice. So the big ideas for us is that AI literacy includes skills to use and understand and evaluate AI systems and tools. We identify foundational skills that are essential for AI literacy and are related to existing initiatives in education, but also grounded in pedagogy and specifically in learning sciences, which is something that we really value at Digital Promise. We want to make sure that you folks, and I know that there are international folks here as well, so we're excited to hear how you're integrating AI literacy into your educational contexts across grade levels and subject areas, because we do think it's important to bring this into the curriculum, no matter what the subject area is. for us, our first big idea is that AI literacy connects to existing initiatives in schools and that you can bring it in different places. We emphasize that users need to understand, use, and evaluate AI systems and tools in order to use them thoughtfully across the curriculum. Here you see our framework, and it's 3 intertwined bidirectional arrows that indicate that there's engagement and multiple modes of engaging with AI concepts. And folks in different places have different entry points to the AI conversation. We're excited that for us, there is no hierarchy between these 3 different categories. You can start by evaluating, or you can start by using, or you can start by understanding. We're excited to be publishing an AI literacy white paper at the end of May. We're working with folks across industry, folks in core AI, as well as researchers and practitioners to develop a white paper that really shares our thinking around AI and indicates the importance of human judgment for us. So our definition of AI literacy is the following. We define AI literacy as the knowledge and skills that enable humans to critically understand, use, and evaluate AI systems and tools to safely and ethically participate in an increasingly digital world. And we encourage you to take our definition and work with it so that it fits into the systems that you're working in. We have folks that have diversity of location here, and that's really exciting. We're excited to work with global organizations. Digital Promise itself is a global organization, and we're excited to see how this translates in different contexts. Thanks, George. We're excited to see how you use this definition in Brazil. So AI literacy. While AI tools are new and likely intimidating for many people, the skills that we use to critically understand, use, and evaluate these technologies are more familiar. And I'm excited to turn it over to Keun-woo, who works a lot more closely with practitioners than I am. I did spend 16 years in the classroom, but Keun-woo's been working with practitioners more closely more recently. And I'm excited to turn it over to her for some practical examples.
Yes, thank you, Pati, for that really great context and grounding us with the digital equity framework and our definition. And so that brings us to our big idea, number 2, that really builds on the first, that foundational skills are essential for AI literacy, are related to existing initiatives in education. And so here we identify 3 foundational literacies or skill sets that are essential to promoting AI literacy. These foundational literacies include media literacy, digital readiness, and computational thinking. It's important to note that there's no consensus definition for each of these constructs, but they are overlapping with other literacies such as information literacy, data literacy, etc. But for clarity, we do provide some definitions here. For media literacy, the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, and create and act using all forms of communication. For digital readiness, we build on Common Sense Media's definition of digital citizenship, of thinking critically, behaving safely, and participating responsibly in the digital world. And for computational thinking, we refer to that as solving problems systematically so that a computer can support the process or product development. And so computational thinking may be the one of the 3 that is less familiar to you. So in the chat, I will include one of our white paper reports on computational thinking. So in essence, we define it as an interrelated set of skills for problem solving in an increasingly digital world. And we see it as applicable to different content areas. And so as you can see on that sort of dark blue outer ring, we have our computational thinking skills like abstraction, pattern recognition, selecting tools. And And in connecting it to artificial intelligence, while AI equips computers with the processes to engage in problem solving with humans, computational thinking equips humans with the skills to engage in problem solving with computers. And thus, we argue that computational thinking skills are foundational to AI literacy. And now we'll walk through the way these literacies show up in different use cases. And so for this one, we're talking about interacting with AI. And whether we are aware, AI algorithms are embedded in everyday technologies. So for example, you might be scrolling on your favorite app, and you might not know that you're interacting with AI through a recommendation algorithm where while you're scrolling, it's showing you images based off a data set of things that you tend to like. So you might leverage media literacy to navigate this information landscape. You might apply digital readiness by thinking through your data privacy and your ownership of that data, and computational thinking through selecting tools. And so the next use case that we're defining with AI is problem solving. So for example, maybe a student is training an AI system to distinguish between images like a banana and not a banana. They would apply media literacy to think about bias in data collection, digital readiness to identify appropriate applications to innovate with these AI tools, and computational thinking, especially here, with that algorithmic thinking, that pattern recognition, thinking critically of that automation that's occurring. And lastly, on our third use case of using AI, we're thinking about creating with AI. Again, a more specific example with that is we know that large language models and generative AI have been booming lately. And we know that these tools develop synthetic content. In this case, with a tool such as ChatGPT, they're developing synthetic written text. And so when articulating and refining prompts, students may be engaging in computational thinking through abstraction, decomposition, testing, debugging. We'll actually walk through an activity which talks through this with an example. But again, with media literacy, evaluating outputs, we know that, again, synthetic information, there's a lot of misinformation, false information that is generated through these large language models. And so that really critical evaluation piece is really important there, which really ties, again, to digital readiness and thinking about what's appropriate, ethical application of synthetic content. Yes, thank you, Pati, for that clarification in the chat. Yes, and great. So we are actually now going to move into a fun part with an activity and building on what we've been speaking to. We are going to practice creating with AI. And so would love to hear from the audience here in the chat if you have ever used a large language model such as ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. Enter 1 in the chat if yes, 0 if no. I'm seeing a lot of ones pour in. Well, great. It seems like this group has a little bit of experience with these. So this might be an activity that you've already tinkered with before, but let's dive in. And so, again, we kind of want to illustrate this for you and help show, not just tell, how AI literacy helps exercise other skill sets. And so the goal is that this activity helps reinforce the sort of big ideas that we're sharing. And so we're going to engage with one of these AI chatbots. We know that ChatGPT is really popular, so you might already have an account. And I want to note that we're not necessarily promoting these products, but we want to use them as a learning tool today. I know, at least in the US, we have Earth Day around the corner. And I do want to elevate that, again, even though we are using these tools, again, for these purposes, want to focus on the learning component. But there is a lot of data and research that these large language models do consume a lot of energy and require a lot of energy input, which can be harmful to the environment. So that may be something we want to think about later. If you have a question about it, we're happy to share articles about that. But yeah, just wanted to give a little plug for that. If you have ChatGPT, please open that up. If you don't have an account, we highly suggest aipedagogy.org because they have an embedded tutorial. And I will, again, it's a lot of ones, so I'm sure a lot of folks have accounts already. But just to show you what aipedagogy.org is, this is what their website looks like on their large language model tutorial. And this is the portion where you can interact with GPT without creating an account. That's not collecting your data. We're going to focus on, again, just the chatbot component, and highly encourage you to explore aipedagogy.org on your own time. All right, so hopefully you have ChatGPT open or another large language model, AI chatbot. And we're going to start with this prompt. We're going to get into the headspace of a student. I know we have a lot of educators in our crowd today with various different titles, whether you're in the classroom, coaching support, or a leader. But yeah, so let's imagine you're a student that is old enough to ethically and safely use these tools. And we're going to begin with the prompt. Write a thank you note to my teacher. All right, so let me just copy paste that in case for easy access. And then now we're going to engage in refining our prompts and evaluation. So we'll share some examples of prompts on how to do that in the chat. You can ask it to provide more detail, alter the tone, modify the length. We also welcome other ideas as well. If you are really familiar with prompting and prompt engineering, we'll give you a minute here to tinker with that. And yeah, and while we're doing that, we'd love to hear from you in the chat if there's any noticings in your outputs or the written responses from these AI chatbots, or things that are potentially alarming, things that you like. We'd love to hear a little bit of your own evaluation and criticality. So yeah, a little bit of wait time there. I think we'll move on. I know these prompts, these AI chatbots tend to respond really quickly. So great. And so in engaging with that activity, we're now going to kind of walk through the different skill sets that are applied through an activity, even as simple as this. So again, we talked about computational thinking, media literacy, digital readiness. For computational thinking, we can see how skills like decomposition and abstraction might apply to prompting. You can decompose different parts of a prompt. For abstraction, you can abstract the most important details of a prompt to help strengthen your prompting. Thank you, Scott. I see some examples coming into the chat. Yeah, feel free to put your outputs from the chatbot in the chat, and any noticings you have, any curiosities, again, any criticality that you have. And then, so for media literacy, again, iterating, it's important to evaluate your output, especially for incorrect information. We want to remind you that with generative AI tools, the output is synthetic. So AI systems are just computers and they make errors. So for an example, earlier today, when I engaged with this prompt, I highlighted through that it started to create synthetic information about lesson details. It also started generating details about the impact of the teacher with very little input that I provided. So they, created this content, which may or may not be true. And so through the context of a thank you note, though this seems relatively low risk, we can only imagine the ethical implications of AI generating false information in other contexts. And so I think with this, we really underscore the value of the human in the loop and the role of media literacy to engage in fact checking and critical thinking. And lastly, if we consider digital citizenship, digital readiness, we want to consider the ethics of data privacy. So for these tools, such as ChatGPT, we know that there's age restrictions so that users must be over the age of 13. I think there's other large language models such as Claude, which I think you have to be 18 to use, actually. We also really, really want to underscore that we want to avoid entering personally identifiable information, such as name, address, birthday, etc., in order to maintain safety as a user. And so Pati, I love that Pati's question in the chat to our audience and participants here. What existing opportunities are there in your school or district to integrate AI literacy? And yeah, we'd love to hear from you. We can let those trickle in if you want to sit with that and think about it. All right. Great. Hopefully that was a fun little primer into AI literacy. And then that brings us to our third main big idea. So now we'll briefly discuss this, which is that districts can integrate AI literacy in a K-12 education across grades and subjects, again, building on existing initiatives within your school or district. And so here we're making a connection to Portrait of a Graduate. And so we know that Portrait of a Graduate, at least in the US, is a common framework that districts use to identify attributes that they believe their students should embody by graduation. So as suggested in the National Education Tech Plan, which Pati referred to earlier, we suggest that districts use Portrait of a Graduate to inform the design of learning experiences, which include AI, the foundational literacies that promote powerful learning experiences. And I see someone, Trisha, saying that they also use the common sense media lessons for foundational skill. Love to see that. And we know that their curriculum is really rooted in those learning sciences and best practices and research as well. And so building on that idea even further, or kind of giving you a little bit of an example of what this might look like, districts can apply integrated learning pathways to identify and design opportunities for students to develop AI literacy throughout K-12 learning experiences. So for this as an example, we're pulling automation, algorithms, and AI, and kind of illustrating how it might come up in different subject areas such as language arts, which you may use a sorting algorithm to categorize different texts, to science, where you may actually program a simulation to predict the impact of different variables on a habitat. And so, great. I think that's it for our slides. We'd love to know if through us speaking through AI literacy, the definition, walking through that example, if you have any questions. And so, yeah, and that's Pati. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
I just want to remind people to take a look at our AI literacy white paper when it comes out in May. So stay tuned for Digital Promise blog post on that. And you can follow us and subscribe to our newsletter. I'll drop a link in chat to that. And Keun-woo has our social links up, and you're welcome to find us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, or X, and always happy to hear from all of you. I don't see any questions. Keun-woo is dropping links to our socials, and I will drop a link to where you can find our newsletter and subscribe to that to stay tuned with announcements, future announcements. We're really excited to be doing this work, and we're learning a lot as we're going out and talking to educators about AI literacy. We have some early recommendations in our AI literacy blog post, which I will also drop in chat. So check that one out. I do see a question from George coming in. Which are the biggest challenges you are facing to bring this into schools? I do a lot of work, George, with school districts, and specifically the districts in the League of Innovative Schools. And we've been working for a while on developing responsible use policies or guidance for both educators and students. And I do think one of the challenges for us is ensuring that folks understand what we're talking about when we are talking about AI literacy. So if you remember from our framework, and maybe Keun-woo can pull up the AI literacy framework, there are multiple overlapping and interconnected components, including the need to understand how to use these technologies effectively, but also evaluate their transparency, their security, and how they're handling student and teacher information. And then you get to the use, which you had an example of today. But as district leaders are looking at bringing this into their context, they notice tensions at the district regarding use and where different folks are on the spectrum of use. And some are really excited to jump in and start using it, but that's not everyone. And we're finding that the more we can build awareness around AI literacy, the better prepared the district and the community will be to bring AI systems and tools into their context. And that's because things are rapidly changing, and especially when it comes to bringing in an emerging technology like AI or generative AI into your context, there's a lot that can change rapidly. So we're encouraging folks to provide guidelines for teachers and students, but not to come up with too many restrictions, because we're all learning together. We're all learning how to best use these systems and tools together. Keun-woo, can you please show the justice-centered and human judgment-centered version of this? Thank you for whoever wanted to see that. This is a preview of something that will be included in our AI literacy white paper. And George, yes, there is a huge diversity when it comes to AI literacy, and we are excited to be starting the conversation, but we also acknowledge that we're living in a bubble, right? Keun-woo and I talk about this all the time. We train teachers all the time, but we know that that's not necessarily happening all over the world. And we do encourage folks to start small and to begin with things that are accessible for folks, whether that's a conversation about Keun-woo mentioned the environmental impact of these technologies and tools on our communities, whether it's a conversation about the ethical implications of the biases that are being perpetuated by these systems and tools, or whether it's a simple activity like the one that Keun-woo just walked us through. There are so many options and so many places to start. I think, George, to your point, another challenge is the amount of resources we have, and it's important to start somewhere and to start with a trusted source. And like Keun-woo said, we really trust this AI pedagogy project. It has a lot of rich, thoughtfully developed resources. We partner with Stanford, and specifically Victor Lee on the Stanford team, who's also developing learning sciences-based lessons for educators, his craft resources. I'll drop a link to those in chat.
Yeah, and I think we also pull a lot from the MIT Raise work as well, or sort of build and iterate and tinker with the resources that they put out.
Absolutely.
But yeah, and even to build on Pati's point, and George, your question around challenges and with districts, and Pati, you saying like starting small. I feel like even with the district leaders that you work with, Pati, I remember hearing from them in our last convening that they really echoed the value of including their community, their local community voice in defining what AI literacy means and what's going on the student level, on the teacher level, on the leadership level. And our district leader was really, it really gave them pause to hear from a student and hear from their perspective. And so not assuming that us as adults, that we know everything, and really kind of leaning into the community and co-creating these acceptable use policies and thinking about academic integrity together in order to sort of center that human judgment and justice piece. Yes, thank you. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, if no one else has any questions, thank you so much. Thank you, Keun-woo. Thank you, Pati. Such a fascinating presentation. As it was shared in the chat, we will be sending a follow-up email to all the registrants next week with the recording of this presentation, as well as all of the resources mentioned here. And thank you so much for coming, and happy AI Literacy Day.